So over the last week, kind of three question statements that people have made to me all kind of collided, converged. One statement was, well, I don't really have time to practice. Then another was, well, I'm not sure Rudy's practice, our practice, is a complete practice. I'm blanking on what the third thing was, but it'll come to me. So I'll start with those two. The bird will fly back in any moment, I'm sure. But up on your screen is an image that some of you may have seen before. I think I used this in a retreat last year. Those of you in the room, it's a picture of this person walking into the light, if you will. Two quotes that go with this. This first quote is from what's called the Katha Upanishads, which were written sometime between the 5th and 4th century BC. That's BC. And it says to us, "It is but a few who hear about the self. Fewer still dedicate their lives to that realization. Even more rare are those who make that their supreme goal of their lives. Blessed are they who through an illuminated teaching, attain to self-realization." So sometime, more than a week ago, people like you and I were sitting in a room like this, and somebody said to them, "What do you really want?" It is but a few who hear about the self. Fewer still dedicate their lives to that realization. As I've discussed with you before, then hearing about the self is grace. That descent of grace, what's called Shaktipada, only God gives grace, gives Shaktipada. And ever how that grace descends, ever how that supreme consciousness descends into itself in you, does it really make a difference? A bird flies over and drops some droppings on you, and you look up and you see the sun, and you say, "Oh, there's the light." You read some poem, some longing takes place. Some longing erupts in us, whether that's some magnificent volcano or just a little twinge. Everything from that moment on is our response. And so while we can discuss that there are different intensities, degrees, if you will, of the intensity of grace, there is a singular intensity of response that's necessary. A singular intensity of response from us, which is the moment by moment response to that extraordinary possibility that's available to us, even though we don't know what it is. Accompanying that descent is that longing magnetizes to itself the very teaching, the very practice, the very asshole guru, whatever, right? That longing is calling to itself to fuel and propel that longing. You all know my, sob, sad story that's full of joy about how I met Rudy and et cetera, et cetera. Some drug dealer went to buy drugs in East Texas when we lived in West Texas and saw Rudy and brought the word, if you will, back to me, brought that energy, and it buried itself in my heart. And my response from that day on has been singular. Blessed are they who, through an illuminated teacher being God, really, and his cohorts, or his agents, attain to self-realization. It is remarkable to me, really, how superficial our response is to that grace. How superficial our response is to the true miracle of our life. The miracle of life is not that we're born, but that we don't have to be reborn. So I read a quote like this from the 5th century. So before the internet, before Facebook, before marketing advertising, the message was being stated. Blessed are those who can know God. So then the quote that I have connected to this is a quote you've heard me read it 1,000 around, you'll hear it another 1,000 times. It says, there are 1,000 paths to God. Find one and become a master in it. The Dalai Lama. There are thousands of paths to God. Find one and become a master in it. Down here at the bottom, there's another quote, probably mine, that says, to not do so is to eviscerate the efficacy of that path to reveal the ineffable. When I suggest to you that our response to grace is what allows that seed that has been planted in us, that is being brought to light, it requires a mastery. And so when I hear, I don't really have time to practice, I'm too busy, I got too much pressure on me, you don't understand me, right? Your problems aren't my problems. My problems aren't your problems. You don't know my problems. Well, as Rudy said, we've heard it all before. Your shit ain't special. The point being is that it's extraordinary to me that we are willing to say, I'm too busy to respond to God. I'm too busy to meditate. I don't have enough time to meditate. I mean, in that whole discussion of time, perhaps the statement is, yeah, you don't have enough time. if you waste your time not having enough time, if we waste our life and the very miracle of liberation that has been called forth in us, if we don't respond to it for whatever reason, none of it is valid. So we huff and puff and we make careers and we have relationships and we this and we that and all this stuff happens. And at the end of it, you're not going to take any of it with you. Here's a secret. There's one thing you have to be free of and that you must leave behind, and that's your identity. Otherwise, you will come back and try it again and have the same dynamic. Well, I'm too busy, da-da-da-da-da. The point being, it's not about not having, it's not about having a life, it's not about whether you're too young or too old. That's the other one I hear. Well, I'm young, I want to party. Okay, fine, right? None of that is the issue. To say that it is, that our life is too busy, that the energy that it takes for me to manage my life, is the reason I can't live within myself, is dualistic thinking. I can testify. I have spent 50 years doing this practice. And 49 and a half of them, spread out over the 50 years, has been me working very hard in the world. "18 hours a day in the bakery for 14 years. Yada, yada, yada. Isn't it miserable? None of that ever was my valid reason to not do my work. Moments after the end of 14 hours, I meditated. And when I went to work before, I meditated. And I meditated all day. This is part of the extraordinary gift of our practice, of our guru, that says, go to fucking work and keep your heart open and feel the flow, etc., etc. I'm amazed. I bump into people all the time who have been involved in some long-term practice who the instruction is meditate for 22 minutes a day and then go live, do whatever you do. No capacity, no instruction to live in ourselves and engage our life from that place. And so when people say to me, I'm too busy, what they're really saying is I don't have the discipline to engage my life in all of its diversity, in all of its challenge, and stay inside myself. Well, there's one or two things you need to do. Learn to stay inside yourself and engage your life that, or simplify your life. I actually have to say I'm dumbfounded sometimes when people start to list to me their 1,000 reasons why their practice isn't working, right? Why this practice isn't working for them. Now, is this the most perfect practice? You better fucking believe it. Was my guru the most perfect guru? Yes, because he's the one that opened my heart and continues to nourish and provide the energy for that heart to stay open. If you, whatever in your mind, wherever in you, somehow have some doubt let's rephrase it. If you don't have 1,000,000% confidence that the practice you're doing, and if it happens to be this one, is the one that's going to take you to God, then fucking do another one. It's extraordinary to me that we can bring that kind of superficiality to our work that says, well, I'm not really sure this is going to get me where I'm going to go. Well, why do it? It's like having a car that we know isn't going to make it. We're going to drive from Texas to New York, and we know it's not going to make it, but we say, well, I'll try it anyhow. Huh? I'm not telling you to do this practice for the rest of your life. I'm doing this practice for the rest of my life, right? You can choose to do it or not do it. But make sure you've done it in depth, and then that will answer for you the question, is this a complete practice? Will it complete you is really the question. We all get these messages. We can hear it. We can read it in Scripture. We can read it on a Hallmark card. One of my most, like heart-stopping times of something I read was from the 2nd century called the Chandogya Upanishads. And you've heard me say the line before, God is one without a second. God is one without a second. Now, if you can hear that and not say, I think I'll spend a lot of my time and energy understanding and experiencing that, then you have to really question the depth of your wish. This is the point of Scripture. It's the point of teaching, is to suggest to us an infinite possibility. But okay, let's not beat ourselves up too much. This statement that we read was probably some asshole guru saying the same thing to a bunch of people sitting in the room that, were a little sloppy and lazy about their practice. It is but a few who hear about the self. Fewer still decide to dedicate their lives to that realization. Even more rare are those who make it the supreme goal of their life. Blessed are they who, through an illuminated teaching, attain to self-realization. What is it that you want in this life? And as I've said to you a few times before, if your realization is not the most important thing in your life, you will not have it. And to quote Rumi, there is but one thing you must remember. If you forget this and remember all else, you will have nothing. If you remember this and forget everything else, you will have everything. That's a paraphrase. This is why Rudy, my guru, the primary guru in our lineage, sat for 8 years, hours after hour after night, every night, saying, I wish to grow. Why would he have done such a thing? Because he was not willing to accept not wanting to grow. He was not willing to accept not feeling that wish to grow in his heart. We're willing to spend our entire life force chasing something. Well, if you're going to chase something with your life force, chase God. Good night, everybody.